Hey, this is Duncan here again, and today we're going to be looking at microphones. There's one specific microphone that has been used for, it's a really robust microphone since it's used in studios, in stages, wherever guys are singing, in live events. So we want to look at it and what makes it stand out from the rest of the microphones, and what do cheaper mics have that this Shure SM58 doesn't have, that plays around the budget of $99. But before we look at that, there was something that I was reading today. There's something that I was reading today by Robert Kiyosaki, and he's talking about how every time we go to school to learn how to become professionals in a certain sector. And he asked the question, then why don't we teach in school and how to get money instead? Because that's a goal anyway. You work so that you can get money, but what if you're taught how to get that money? Yeah, there's a whole debate of how to there's a whole debate behind that. Like, yeah, the way you get money is through working, but there are other financial wisdom things that you might actually need. So I think that's why he was really asking that question. Anyway, moving on. So let's go back to the Shure SM58. So what I know about microphones is that they're built quite simply. Of course, there's a whole R&D behind coming up with the specific design of the microphones. But essentially, what they have is a diaphragm, which has a coil on it, and the coil is surrounded by a magnet. Then now the coil is run through the XLR connector. That's basically it. But there's a whole research that is put into making that microphone, because like if you look at the Shure SM58, one of the things that you actually look for in a microphone, it's actually three things. What you look for is the frequency response, the noise floor or the self noise, and well, how applicable is it to the work that you want to do? Because yes, I won't lie, there are other microphones that are better than the Shure SM58, but again, it's quite robust. The Shure SM58 is quite robust. Those microphones that might be like the Shure SM7B, we might put it in the same class as the Shure SM58 because they're both dynamic microphones. But the way it was technically engineered was that the SM7B was going to be used in a studio setup. So if we look at the frequency response, the Shure SM58, in terms of frequency response, it is going to give you around 50 hertz to 15 kilohertz, which is good for vocal. It's essentially a vocal microphone. Yes, you can use it for maybe instruments that don't have a lot of bass, because it has a bass attenuation from 40 to 100 hertz. So obviously, if you're going to use it for the bass guitar or the kick drum, you're not going to get the best results. And then the self noise, you essentially get below 5 dB SPL, which for microphone, that's quite good. That's dependent on every other factor being up to standard, if I can say that. For example, now the wires that you're using, if they're shielded or not, because if they're not shielded, most of the time you're going to find interferences, and then you're going to get a hum or just weird sounds from the speakers. And then if also you're if you're using it in a live setup, and your mixer also has some preamp issues, or you have some grounding issues, of course you're going to experience some of the things. So number one, we've talked about the frequency response, which is from 50 to 15 kilohertz, which for a dynamic microphone, it makes sense, because like we humans generally have on the spectrum, the frequency spectrum, we have a hearing, like we can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz, but beyond 15 kilohertz, you usually can't hear it. And according to research, only most of the time, the older you get, the less you hear of the high frequencies. due to age, I guess. But we've looked at the frequency spectrum, so 50 hertz to 15 to 15 kilohertz, and then the self noise is 5 dB, less than 5 dB SPL. And the robustness, it's so robust, you can use it for many things. And advantage that the SM58 has is time. It has been there for a long time, and so it has been tried and tested. Now, what makes it stand out from the other, cheap microphones, which most of them obviously are well below the $99 mark or even the $50 mark. Well, for one, I'd have to say is that the three things that we're looking at: the frequency response. Most of these cheap microphones that you get, they have the worst frequency response. They mostly focus on the mid section of the frequency spectrum, and it like well below 15 kilohertz, and that 15 kilohertz is what gives breath to the voice. That's what makes it a good vocal microphone. The SM58, a good vocal microphone. And these cheap microphones, well, according to my experience, when you use them, you end up adding if you're a mixer, you'll end up adding the highs, and then the audio won't sound as good because adding highs, it's just a mess. It's just, honestly, it's a mess. And you end up also cutting a lot of low frequencies because they sound boomy and muddy, and they just don't sound good. And they also distortion. Sorry, I forgot to add that. The SM58 also, the other good thing about it is that it doesn't distort easily. Like, its dynamic range is quite high, and that's the difference with the other cheap microphones. Like, you might be singing and then you reach where you want to go. You really want to go up there, and you end up, you're not shouting, but you're just loud. Okay, and these cheap microphones, they distort easily. Okay, it's like whenever they just notice you becoming loud, that's it. Distortion happens. But with the SM58, at least it's able to handle quite some SPL in quotes, but it's able to handle high, can I say volumes? Not really, but it has really good dynamic range. So that's the other thing. So those are 4 things, and yeah, that's what makes it stand out from the rest of the cheap microphones. Regarding to what other alternatives you might have for the SM58, I'll link my Instagram post up here. I've listed some of them, the good alternatives for the SM58, because there's the Sennheiser, of course, and there's also is it the Electro Voice? I think it's the Electro Voice, yeah. But anyway, just check my post on Instagram, and then you'll be sure to find some good alternatives. I guess that wraps it up. So thank you once more. I'll see you in the next video.